you've already worked a full day, and you're still going. The dishes are still there. Dinner was something you ate standing up. Your family went to bed, and you opened the laptop back up. Not because the boss made you. Nobody made you. You just did it. My name's Frank. I watch you people. That's my whole thing. And I've been watching this particular move, the one where you can't stop working, for a long time now. And I want to tell you something that nobody has actually sat down and explained to you. You are not overworking because you're ambitious. You're overworking because somewhere in the back of your brain, there's a 28-year-old version of you who watched their dad come home on a Tuesday afternoon with a box of stuff from his desk. And that kid decided they were never going to let that happen to them. That was the first lesson your generation was taught about work. Loyalty means nothing. Safety is an illusion. And if you stop moving, you might just disappear. So you never stopped moving. Here's where it gets interesting, though, because that 28-year-old made a decision that made total sense in 1993. The problem is that same decision is now running your life at 50-something, and the world has changed. But the rule in your head hasn't. Now, before I get to the psychology, the why your brain won't let you stop part, I want you to see your situation from the outside. Because you are doing something absolutely wild right now. On your left side, you've got your kids, some of them grown, some almost grown, some still very much in the house eating everything in the refrigerator. On your right side, you've got your parents, getting older, maybe needing doctor's appointments, maybe needing help with the house, maybe just needing a lot of phone calls at inconvenient times. And you're in the middle, paying for both, worrying about both, scheduling around both, while also having a full-time job. A 2025 survey by Finance of America looked at people between 40 and 60. 1/3 of them described feeling physically, emotionally, and financially drained from trying to take care of aging parents and their own kids at the same time. Among those who identified as sandwiched between both, 86% said caring for their parents left them emotionally wiped out. That number was up from 79% just 3 years earlier. It's getting worse, not better. And the kicker? A 2025 Allianz study found that 59% of people in this exact situation, squeezed from both sides, had either cut back or completely stopped putting money into their retirement accounts. Stopped completely. So they're working more, saving less, and somehow the answer to that equation keeps being work harder. Now, why? Why is that the answer? Let me take you back, not to when you were born, to when you got your first real job. It was the late 80s or 90s, and the first thing you noticed was that the rules had changed. Your parents had jobs for life. Companies were like small towns. You showed up, you put in 30 years, and the company took care of you. Pension, healthcare, gold watch at the end. By the time you showed up, that deal was gone. Corporate America in the 90s was in the middle of a downsizing obsession. Companies were cutting people left and right, calling it restructuring and right-sizing, which, for the record, are the two nicest ways ever invented to say, we're getting rid of you. Your generation walked into that. Some of you watched it happen to your parents first. And a 2026 psychology analysis put it plainly. The unspoken message of that era was, your employer is not your family, and long-term loyalty doesn't get you anything. That message went in, deep. So your generation made a smart move at the time. You stopped expecting companies to protect you. You started building your own protection, through skills, through hours, through being the person who could not be cut because they were too useful. You made yourself impossible to fire by making yourself impossible to replace. You got really, really good at your job, and you worked really, really hard at it. Smart, reasonable, makes total sense. Except the market crashed in 2001, the dot-com bubble. And then just when you'd rebuilt from that, 2008, the whole financial system fell apart. Your 401k, which by the way was supposed to be your pension since actual pensions no longer existed, got cut in half. Your generation hit the workforce at 401k time. You were the first generation expected to manage your own retirement money, no company doing it for you. And then the two biggest market crashes of your working lifetime happened right when you'd started to get somewhere. New York Life's data shows the average Gen Xer didn't even start saving for retirement until age 31. By comparison, people entering the workforce today start at 22. 9 years of compounding interest, gone. And how did you respond to all of that? The way you'd been trained. You worked harder. Here's where the psychology gets actually interesting. Because there's a specific thing that happens when people use work as protection for long enough. Work stops being something you do, it becomes who you are. A March 2025 piece from YourTango looked at this directly. The habits Gen X calls a work ethic that are actually something else. Working through exhaustion and calling it dedication. Feeling guilty when you're not productive and calling it drive. Being irritable at home because your brain never actually leaves the office and calling it stress management. The American Psychological Association has a name for that kind of thing: burnout. Not the dramatic kind where you collapse, the quiet kind, where you're still functioning, still showing up, still grinding, but something inside is running on empty and has been for a while, and you don't notice because you've been doing it so long it feels normal. And here's the really fun part. Because your generation, culturally, does not talk about this stuff. You grew up at a time when saying "I'm struggling" wasn't really something adults did. You dealt with it. You managed it. You maybe made a joke about it because Gen X invented dark humor as a coping mechanism, and frankly, that's impressive. But you did not sit down with someone and say, "I think I might be burning out." So the feelings went underground and the work kept going. Now, retirement. Let's talk about it, because you've been not talking about it for years. Schroders ran a large U.S. retirement survey in 2025. They found that the average Gen Xer expects to retire with about $711,000 saved, and they believe they need about $1.1 million to actually do it comfortably. That's a gap of roughly $405,000. That's the biggest savings gap of any generation in the survey. Not the youngest workers who haven't had time yet, you, the generation in the middle of their peak earning years. And before you think that's because people are at least working toward that $711,000, the National Institute on Retirement Security found that 40% of Gen Xers have saved nothing, not a little, nothing. A Bankrate study from 2024 found that 69% of Gen X workers say they feel behind on their retirement savings. 47% say they're not just behind, they're significantly behind, the highest of any generation asked. And here's the part that might feel a little too familiar. A 2025 nationwide survey asked non-retired Gen Xers when they started treating retirement as an urgent priority. 61% said not until their 50s. Their 50s. Not because they're irresponsible, because between the corporate downsizings and the market crashes, and the kids and the parents, and the feeling that working harder was the only reliable lever they had, retirement was always the thing they'd deal with later. Later kept arriving. The work didn't stop. And now 15% of non-retired Gen Xers say they genuinely don't know if they'll ever be able to retire. Not won't, don't know if they can. That number, that quiet background fear, is part of why the work doesn't stop. Because stopping feels dangerous. Because the moment you slow down, the gap between what you have and what you need becomes very loud. So you keep going, because moving feels safer than looking. But there's something else going on too. Something that doesn't get talked about because it's uncomfortable. A financial planner was quoted in a major industry publication last year. He described a client, a Gen Xer approaching retirement, who sat across from him in tears. And when the advisor asked what was wrong, the client said, "Working was my life." Not work was stressful, not "I'm worried about money." Working was my life. When you make work your armor for 30 years, when work is what protects you, what defines you, what keeps the scary thing from happening, you don't just have a career, you have an identity. And the idea of retirement isn't just about money, it's about who you would be without the thing you've been doing since you were 28 years old, scared, watching people get let go, deciding you were going to outwork everyone around you just to stay safe. That's not laziness in reverse. That's a deeply human response to a very difficult set of circumstances. You weren't wrong to work hard. You weren't wrong to be self-reliant. Those choices kept you standing through 8 recessions. Yes, 8 if you're counting, through 2 market crashes, through raising kids and caring for parents, and watching the entire retirement system get quietly shifted from employer's problem to your problem without anyone really asking if that was okay. You adapted. You survived every time. The question now isn't whether you work hard. You've established that. The question is whether the version of you that learned to run, learned to keep moving no matter what, is still the right person to be running the show. Or whether it might be time to let that 28-year-old with the box of his dad's desk stuff finally get some rest. Work kept you safe. For a long time. It probably still does. But safe and stuck can look identical from the inside. If you like this video, hit the like and subscribe button below and check out one of the videos on the screen next. See you there.